Now that the Lane Hudson debacle has come and gone and he's got his contract signed and we can move forward with our lives, next up is the home opener for the Montreal Canadiens, where they host the... Oh, hell, I can't say it.
Release the Kraken!
Hey again, Kosta here from PuckTalk Montreal. Welcome to this preview of the home opener between the Montreal Canadiens and, yes, you guessed it, the Seattle Kraken. Now, before we get started on the lineups, let's talk first about one of our partners, and that is Insta Customs. They are the #1 destination for apparel printing company and the highest rated print shop in Canada with over 3,000 Google reviews, a 4.9 star rating, and they were nominated for a 2024 Canadian Business Choice Award. They print on all your favorite clothing, plus coffee and travel mugs, and yes, they even offer embroidery. Orders are more often printed and shipped the very same day, and larger orders in less than 3 days with free shipping. Open 7 days a week. They're located on Stanley Street. Easy to remember because it ties in with the Habs' ultimate goal of winning the Stanley Cup. So whether it's for yourself, a loved one, or your business, trust Insta Customs. Visit them in person or order online at instacustoms.com. So now, as we talk about Insta Customs, let's take a look at the lineup or the projected lineup, I should say, for the Seattle Kraken. It starts on the first line with Jared McCann, Matty Beniers, Jordan Eberle. Of course, Jared McCann is one of those guys that some fans were looking at to sign in the offseason or bring to Montreal in the offseason as we were looking for a second-line center. Funny enough, as he's on the wing in Seattle. Second line is Mason Marchment, centered by Shane Wright, and on the opposite wing is Eeli Tolvanen. Chandler Stevenson is the third-line center. He's flanked by Jaden Schwartz and Ryan Winterton, and Frederick Gaudreau centers the fourth line with Ty Carty and Yanni Neiman. Then you take a look at the defensive core. You have Vince Dunn and Adam Larsson on the first pairing, Brandon Montour and Ryan Lindgren on the second, and Josh Mahura and Jamie Olesiak on the third pairing. Now, here's the thing about the lineups for the Seattle Kraken. Their first line is definitely a bona fide first line. Jordan Eberle, always dangerous in the offensive zone. He can finish. He can create plays out of nothing. We saw what he could do with Team Canada when he was at the junior level. Then when he went to the Islanders, underappreciated, I would say, is a good thing to say, but then ultimately going in the expansion draft to Seattle, which was a little bit of a godsend because Eberle is a fantastic hockey player. Matty Beniers, we know he's got all kinds of finish, and Jared McCann is another one of those guys who can finish and can bring the physicality as well along the half wall. Then you take a look at the second line. Shane Wright, the fourth overall pick in the year that the Canadiens decided to grab Juraj Slafkovsky as first overall. And you know, he still got that bone to pick with the Canadiens after all that. Then you have Mason Marchment, another guy who's relatively thick on the wing and can finish. Looking at the third line, you got Jaden Schwartz and Chandler Stevenson. They're always dangerous. And of course, Frederick Gaudreau is dangerous in the fourth line. So there are some elements that are dangerous up and down the lineup for the Seattle Kraken. But after you get past that first line, the consistency kind of shifts. And so you really don't have the same offensive output as you would that first line. Then you take a look at the defensive pairings, and Vince Dunn and Adam Larsson are absolutely the best defensive pairing on the Seattle Kraken. But the guy that I look at the most on the Seattle Kraken is Brandon Montour because he brings the pain and he brings the offense. He's not afraid to jump into the rush to create offense, and he's not afraid to get physical with anybody. Doesn't matter who you are, he's going to finish a body check. And so, and then of course there's also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jamie Olesiak, who is also a very good defenseman for the Seattle Kraken. And then of course their ace in the hole is their goaltender. And that is, of course, Joey Daccord. He's backed up by Matt Murray. Now, Murray, of course, you know, his career is kind of dwindling, for lack of a better term. But Daccord is right in the middle of possibly the greatest streak in his career. He started both games for the Kraken thus far, and he looked fantastic in both, taking the second game with the Vegas Golden Knights to overtime with some fantastic goaltending, ultimately winning that game on an overtime goal by Jared McCann. So what can the Canadiens do to beat the Seattle Kraken? For that, let's talk about our other partner, and that is cheapesttshirts.ca. Proudly Canadian and trusted by thousands of customers, cheapesttshirts.ca delivers unbelievable value. With over 1,000 products and more than 36 trusted brands like Gildan, Jerseys, American Apparel, and M&O, the selection is unmatched. Whether you're shopping for everyday clothing, tote bags, aprons, and so much more, they've got it all in one place. Cheapesttshirts.ca is the go-to source for businesses, events, apparel printing companies, and resellers, or people just looking for the best deals on everyday clothing. Plus, enjoy free shipping on larger orders and a simple, easy-to-use website that makes ordering online a breeze. Get the cheapest deals in Canada today at cheapesttshirts.ca. So what can the Canadiens do to beat the Seattle Kraken? Well, number one, they're going to have to match them shot for shot in goal. And that's a little bit of an issue for me. And I know a lot of you out there have put it in the comments how hard I am on Sam Montembeault, but you have to understand where I'm coming from. It's not so much that I'm blaming Montembeault for his lack of technique. I blame his coach, because everything is fixable so long as you have a desire and a will. And I know Montembeault's got that, because otherwise he would have never gone from being the third string in Florida to the first in Montreal. So I'm not debating his will to be better, but you need to give him the proper tools. And I don't think the Canadiens goalie coach has done that thus far in his tenure with Montreal. Has he gotten better? Yes. How? Because of the amount of time he spent between the pipes. The more repetitions, the more games you play, the better you become. But at a certain point in time, as I've kind of noticed to start this season, you plateau. I haven't seen Sam Montembeault play a good game from the preseason until now. So the jury's still out for me. He could very possibly come out and play an absolutely fantastic game in front of the home crowd, but I want to see certain things in his games get better. I want to see him come out to the top of the crease more. I want to see him control his rebounds a little bit better, and I want him to have better use of his stick. They're just three things, but they're three things that are going to make him not much of a better goaltender. So if you're looking at it from a goaltending perspective, who's got the advantage? To me, it's simple. Joey Daccord is the better goaltender than Sam Montembeault. So I give him the advantage there. When you look at the decor, there's no comparison. Montreal's skill and depth on defense way outshines that of the Vegas Golden Knights. When you take a look at the top pairing of Mike Matheson and Noah Dobson, they can both be good in the defensive zone and on the offensive side of the puck, although we really haven't seen it all that much from Dobson yet. But we know he's got that game. We saw him do it with the Islanders. As for Mike Matheson, so far he's done a really good job mitigating the turnovers and being good in his own zone. He needs to continue that. And the second pairing of Hudson and Caden Gooley, well, now that Hudson's contract is gone, I expect him to be able to focus more on his game and be better as the games progress. He has a tendency of giving away the puck, but that comes with the territory when you're talking about a guy who's an offensive stalwart from the defensive side of the puck. And then you take a look at Arbor Xhekaj and Alex Carrier. Carrier is awesome defensively, and Arbor Xhekaj has done really good work on the back end for Montreal thus far. So can they do good things against the Seattle offense? I think so. I think they could dominate them both physically and skill-wise to be able to get pucks out fluidly and create opportunities off the rush. And then, of course, there is the offense. You take a look at our first line, 1-to-1, they match up pretty good between the two of them. Then you take a look at the second line for the Montreal Canadiens, where you've got Zach Bolduc, Oliver Kapanen, and Ivan Demidov. And I think that line way outshines any of the bottom three from the Seattle Kraken. The same could be said for Newhook, along with, who the hell is the pairing again? I can't even remember anymore. Newhook's line is another one that looks really good together. And then, of course, there's a fourth line of Evans, Laine, and Josh Anderson. And that's the one line I worry about on the Canadiens. Not for the same reason as most fans do. I don't see a problem with the way Patrik Laine is playing right now. You may want offensive output. That's not what I'm looking at right now. Again, I'm going to come back to what I was talking about when I talk about players being given roles. Right now, Patrik Laine's focus is becoming better 5-on-5. He's not being pressured to produce offensively. Sure, you'd like to see a little bit more on the power play, but at 5-on-5, the focus is on playing a better defensive game. And so far, he's done that. So before everybody starts trading him away to I don't know where, like Cucamonga, let's stop and think about what Martin St. Louis is trying to do with Laine to make him a better player. People are complaining about how slow he is. He's not slow. Again, I'm going to get back to it. His feet don't move as fast as everybody else, but he can get up and down the ice as quick as anybody so long as he skates in full stride. And that's one of the things that he doesn't do that he's going to work on. Because oftentimes when he comes across the blue line, you see him, he shimmies back and forth with little C-cuts as opposed to taking full strides. If he's the type of guy who's going to be playing more like a power forward as opposed to a sniper, a lot like Josh Anderson, he's got to keep his feet moving. And when he does keep his feet moving, he can move. So that's an adjustment in his game that I expect to see as time progresses. We're going to be 4 games into the season. I'm not waiting for it to happen tomorrow. After 20 games, I'll reassess it. But right now, I want to see him play better 5-on-5, and he's doing that. So I'll leave it at that. And I'll take my wins where I can get him when it comes to Patrik Laine. So overall, what kind of a game do I expect? Well, it's going to be hard-hitting. It's going to be fast. And it's going to be a battle of attrition. Who's going to want it more? You know the Canadiens are going to want it. You know they're going to start this game off with a rousing introduction from Michel Lacroix, and obviously the tribute that's coming for the late, great Ken Dryden. After all, it is the first home game for the Canadiens, so it's their first opportunity to actually do this. You weren't going to do something like that in the preseason, although some other teams did. But the thing about Montreal is their skill and their speed is much better than that of the Seattle Kraken. But notoriously, we see the Canadiens play down to lesser opposition. Now, right now, of course, the Kraken sitting at the top of their division with 2 wins, but it's early in the season. The Canadiens, for their part, are sitting 3rd in the division. Is that going to last? Remains to be seen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. With a better start, like Marty St. Louis wants, maybe. But at the end of the day, who's going to come out on top? If this turns into a slugfest, I think the Kraken can win this hockey game, especially given the fact that the court can be so good in goal. The Canadiens have to pepper him with shots. The first 2 games, he really didn't get all that much rubber shot against them. The Canadiens need to get at least 30 shots on goal on the court. And they got to move him. It can't be one and done. You got to make sure he scrambles. You got to make sure he goes post to post and move him laterally. You're not going to beat him straight up without a screen and without movement. So the Canadiens need to make sure they not only play a good north-south game, but with Decord and nets, they got to go east-west and create gaps in his goaltending. The same holds true for the Seattle Kraken. Although, so far this season, Montembeault hasn't been that good as far as, closing up the gaps and really not giving the other teams much to look at when they're shooting at him. I've shown you guys that his angles have been off. That needs to be corrected. I'm sure they've already looked at it. There's no doubt in my mind. And I'm going to watch tomorrow. If he's at the top of his crease and doing better, then you know what? My criticism works. If he sits back in his net and the goal continues to go over his shoulders and into the net, and I'm asking you to watch that, then tell me if you see it. I see it through my eyes, guys. I'm a fan of the Montreal Canadiens, right? Don't get me wrong. But I'm not a fanboy. I'm not going to sit here and go raw 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When I see good things, I'm going to say good things. When I see bad things, I'm going to criticize. When Patrik Laine goes 20 games in and he hasn't scored or he's not playing well 5-on-5, I'll call him out, right? Those are the things that I'm looking at, is what the expectations are for each individual player. Nick Suzuki has to score in this hockey game. He hasn't scored yet. Cole Caulfield got off the schneid in the last game. Now it's up to Suzuki and maybe even Slafkovsky, who's been close, but hasn't put the puck in the net to actually score. Then Zach Bolduc, he's got 3 goals in 3 games. Will that continue? Will Oliver Kapanen put another one in? Alex Newhook, will he get off and get a goal? There's all these questions, and of course there's Ivan Demidov. Will the Canadiens start to use him a little bit more effectively? Right now, he's not seeing enough ice at 5-on-5. And the second unit of the power play is barely getting on the ice. And that's another thing that's going to be an interesting thing for Montreal. The specialty teams game. Will they be able to score on the power play at a better than a 20% clip like they've done so far this season? I'm not impressed with the power play at all. Last 2 shows ago, I talked about the zone entry for the Canadiens, and I did that for a particular listener. I didn't do it because I wasn't happy about the zone entries, because they seem to work, right? But you also need to have other options as far as zone entries are concerned, and I much prefer a zone entry where you've got extra pressure on the weak side of the puck after you send it in than I do the slingshot. I'm not a big fan of the slingshot, but it is working, so you got to give some credit where credit's due. But when you take a look at our power play, number one, we've got to generate some shots from the point. It can't be all about distributing the puck. You need to get firepower up there. Lane Hudson and Noah Dobson need to get shots through. And again, not overpowering, accurate, 9 inches to a foot off the ice so that they can be easily deflected, and don't aim for the top corner on every shot because 90% of the time you're going to miss. That's a known number. Top corners are targeted. Why? Well, when you're closer in, they're easier to hit. When you're far out, the angle is different, the distance is different, the puck tends to levitate a little bit more. So you miss them more often than you hit them. So I want to see point shots be a little bit lower and more easily deflected. The other thing, too, is that lower point shots also create rebounds. So guys at the net front, like a Slafkovsky, like a Gallagher, will be able to get second chance opportunities, as will guys that are rushing the net, like we've seen Caulfield do and like we've seen Bolduc do. So it generates offense. It doesn't often have to be the prettiest goal, but it can be a nice goal nonetheless. So what's my prediction for tomorrow's game? Well, given the energy in the building, I believe Montreal is going to be able to win this one. The Kraken, they're traveling. They're going to be a little bit more tired than the Habs. That's always a factor. Time zone's always a factor. So I think Montreal is going to be able to come away with this. Probably a 4-3 score, possibly 5-3 with an empty netter. But don't take my word for it. I'm no professional prognosticator. But tell me what you think. What do you think is going to happen with the Canadiens game? Who's going to win it? I'd be interested to know, and I want you to tell me what you're focusing on for this hockey game. Early in the season, we look at the team as a whole, but you have to focus on one specific thing to start the season so that it gives you hope. I'm focusing on line A's 5-on-5 play, right? Because everything else seems to be working so far. Maybe not as well as we'd like, but it is working, other than maybe the power play. That's the other thing I'm looking at. And of course, as always, I'm critical of goaltending because that's just my thing, right? I'm not always going to be critical. If somebody plays well, they're going to get flowers from me. If they play like crap, they're going to get crap. But I'm going to be honest. I always am, always will be, and I'm not going to lie about what I'm thinking. And that's the one promise I can make to everybody that listens to this podcast. So let's see what happens. We'll talk to you post-game after the Canadiens beat the Kraken, hopefully, after the home opener. And again, tell me what you're focusing on. What is the positive point? What's the negative point you're going to be watching to see how things go? And what kind of result do you expect? We'll talk post-game.